are on.
All right,
YouTube.
hello everybody on YouTube. We are in the process of working out going on Facebook Live for some reason. It's silly. It's silly. Was it Friday? Was it Friday I had it fixed, right?
Yeah, Friday was fine.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, this is just deciding to be cantankerous. But that's all right. We'll get her done. So as you can see on YouTube, you guys can see we got some guests in the studio with us today. We got Jim and Pam Whining.
Hello.
The higher-ups of Axe Ministry, Axe Media Group. The bosses. Shh, don't talk about them. Here they are.
Yeah.
We don't talk bad about our bosses here.
Good.
So, I forgot to get myself a coffee, too.
Oh, my gosh.
That happens.
you one?
Nah, it's all right. You can. It'll be fine. I'm trying to. I have to change the Facebook codes and all that. Destination Facebook. I'm hearing us playing somewhere.
Yeah, we're probably me. Yeah.
Well, you're acting calm under duress.
Who, me?
Yes. Very good.
Especially with the bosses here.
Yes.
Like, oh no.
Very calm.
Come on, this thing. All right, let's log into Facebook. Hopefully it'll work this time. So how you doing, Jim?
I'm fine.
Good.
Mm-hmm. I want to hear about your guitar sometime. What happened?
Okay, well, I'll talk about that today because it's still in the shop.
Oh.
What is going on with this thing? It's not letting me log in. All right, I guess I'll just have to shut the whole thing down and start it back up.
Gee.
I've been trying to learn a little bit about economics, world economics.
Well, it's important.
It's so complex.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you been listening to the show, the Tony Hammett show?
The gold
Oh, yeah,
standard.
yeah.
It's
The
a
new
very,
gold
it's a
standard.
very interesting, it's a very interesting show.
I've been learning how they pin economies, smaller economies they pin to larger ones, and base those economies off of those. So they use the same banking system and all of that in order to pin that economy to another one. And that influences that region's economy and how our ideals, so we have communism, socialism, we have capitalism, so those are different ideals, economic ideals.
Right.
Well, those ideals come with different economic systems. And so they pin regional places to those, and there's a battle there. So they're trying to gain influence in those areas. And what happens is when we have major recessions or
Here we go. You ready?
Really?
Sorry.
Yep.
We're starting it.
we're started.
Okay.
I'm using Dr. Paul's presets, but that's all right. We got it. We got it going.
Okay, gotta go.
Now you guys are ready for the music.
Ah.
Thank you for your patience with me, man. I appreciate it. All right. So, good morning. Coming to you live from Axe Media Group headquarters here in beautiful Springfield, Missouri. It's the Morning Drive with Matt and Jay. We're their hosts, Matt and Jay. Of course, we got a couple of special guests in the studio with us today. We got Jim Whining. We got Pam Whining, his lovely wife, sitting next to me over here. She is like a rose among the thorns,
Yeah.
Oh, I know that.
That's true.
or like a rose in a pile of horse manure,
Oh, gee. Oh, gee.
or what do you guys call that? That kick butt llama pellets.
Oh, yeah, kick ass.
I've been trying not to say that for like the last.
Just said it. Just said
But
it.
that's actually on naturalsolutionstore.bc.
Yeah, it is.
So
You can buy some.
And I would just tell you this.
that's really good for
You know,
fertilizing your garden.
no, let me just say
No
this.
crap.
You know,
Go ahead, Jim.
anyway, they're called llama beans. And our front yard for a long time was not really a front yard. It was an area that we kept llamas and crias and babies as they're growing up. And, of course, no longer do we do the Showtime Llamas and Alpacas program for autism there. So I decided, with my wife's really regrets, she didn't want to do this. I had Stony Construction reconfigure our front yard, so we actually had a corralling area on the west side of the property, and the
Thank
front
you for
part
the
of the
share.
property We have a nice open area all the way up to our front porch, and I put down, and I'm serious, I put down 1 bag of fescue tall, 50 pounds, and my front.
It's a grass type for those of you who don't know.
Yeah.
and my
A pasture too.
yeah, that's true.
It's good grazing grass.
And it's an area probably maybe 150 yards by 500 yards.
Yeah, it's pretty
about
big.
that size. And I have the thickest grass you would believe, and that's because that ground has llama beans on it.
Oh,
And
yes.
it does kick you. Yeah.
What does that cost? What does that cost?
I don't know, whatever it is on
When
the
you
thing.
say that
So
it kicks
it's a
you, you
bag
mean
of
it
it?
smells bad?
No,
there is
no.
smell
No.
with llama beans. No
They
smell.
deliver that to your house? Like, what is that, FedEx? How do you get it?
They'll do that.
FedEx.
Oh yeah, no problem.
Now, do you send them from your house?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you actually have you're the well, you're not the manufacturer.
You
You're
bag
the
it up.
you're the
Distributor.
yeah, the distributor, the packager of
We're in labor.
Well, the
Said-
llamas are the distributors.
llama beans.
apparently.
Yeah, they're now they're actually closer related to camels, right, than they are anything else.
They're camelids.
They're
They're a member
camel-
of the camelid family. And we have llamas, and then we have 1 alpaca.
Now alpacas are smaller than llamas, correct?
Yeah, they're
I saw
smaller.
somebody that showed me that I don't know if it was on your Facebook page or whatnot that said, "This is the difference between a llama and alpaca," and had them standing next to each other.
Yeah.
And llamas are way taller than alpacas.
Right.
Yeah,
and-
we've had both.
They've got some attitude.
What's it like to maintain their hoofs and stuff and their teeth?
Well, we've had a guy that's trimmed our hooves for our llamas for 20 years.
Now,
Danny
are
Smith.
they called farriers as well?
No,
What's Danny called anyway?
I don't know.
I actually,
He's
he's a
farriers.
sheep
Or
shearer
horse-
that does llamas as well.
Oh, that's not a
you
bad
shear
job to
them?
have.
Huh?
You shear them?
Yeah,
gee.
you shear them.
And is there a use for their...
Not bad.
Oh, gosh. It's a long hour here. Long hour. We shear them. You can sell the fiber if you want to. And or we give some away too. And then we trim their hooves and give them a shot or a wormer once a year. Or we actually do a little bit more than that. But
They look like
at
they
that
could
time.
run fast if you tried
If
to
they
catch them.
wanted to. If they wanted.
But yours are spoiled rotten, right? They think you got food. They come up
Oh,
to you.
yes, yes.
Our horses are like that. You're getting bombed. If you don't know what you're doing, it'll scare you because you have all 3 horses coming up at you at once
One
thinking you
time.
got treats. And one horse, he's a licker. He'll sit there and just lick your arm. Just this
Really?
big old nasty wet horse tongue.
What's it like again?
we still have.
These
two-
sound effects are brought to
we
you by
still
Matt
have 2
Pearson.
horses. We still have 2 horses, and then we have.
Yeah, I saw them.
Yeah.
Anyway, and we have 3
Donkeys.
three miniature donkeys. Well, one's a spotted ass, and the other 2 are miniature donkeys.
Yeah.
And
I'm so immature. I am so immature.
It's hard, isn't it?
Just because one's a spotted ass. All right, well.
Lizzie is a registered spotted ass. That is.
I can spot one a
breed.
mile away.
Yeah, oh, great, great. This is bad.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a group.
So you guys are used to being up earlier in the morning than I am.
Yeah.
Obviously, yes.
Well, I'm still waking up. I was here till about 1:30 last night.
Really?
Yeah, well, we had Barney came in, set his big drum set up
Yeah.
right there, and I sit here, and we sit here and just practice. We go back and forth, jamming, and we got our headphones on.
Oh, that's great.
We do it at night when there's nobody else in the office except for the cleaning people. So,
Wow.
yeah, we're jamming out in here. And,
good.
trying to work on writing some new material, new songs. Jay's helping with that.
Great.
So, and I have a good idea for, and you guys got to tell me about that. I probably shouldn't talk about it on the air until we figure it out. I'm super excited about it. We should do it at least once or twice a month in the evening, about 9 o'clock, and call it That's Right. Only spell it WRITE, and have everybody type in the comments what they want to add word-wise to songs that we're writing.
Oh, wow.
That would be neat.
What do you think of that, guys?
I like that. I like
be
that.
fun.
Collaboration here.
Yeah, I think that would be so much fun. We
Yeah.
got Linda Fleetwood on. Randy Whining is listening and watching in. Good to see you, Randy.
Oh, my son is supposed to be returning a trailer. What do you? Oh, he
he
probably
can
already-
return a trailer and watch this at
Yeah,
the same
okay.
time.
Yeah, he was doing some.
It is pretty
Oh, so
dangerous.
he's on the
Driveway.
hook now.
He's on the hook. Yeah. Oh my gosh. This is play on word day. Play
Scott says, hello, everyone, waiting on my load home. Jonathan Kretschmann says, good morning, out in Arizona. It's one of those drivers. And he's a top fan. Scott's a top fan this week. Priscilla Kemp's a top fan. Steve Schultz, what's up with you, man? You're not a top fan.
Joe Katie's fast approaching top
on. Miss
fan.
seeing
Yeah.
you, Steve.
Yeah, morning, guys, and Jim and Pam. I should say it like he does. Morning, Jim and Pam.
Oh God.
So
Sounds
I'm working
Missouri.
on my Steve Schultz impression. Linda Fleetwood, Joe Katie,
I guess there's just no shame. Is
Sandy Bray. She says love it. Randy Whining says I dropped it off. Listen to
Good.
you.
Good.
I am driving.
Off the hook.
Okay.
So he's listening while he's driving.
Our son did a wonderful thing. We rented a Bobcat. And we did some work on the driveway and the garage entrance, and he did an awesome job.
And
And
the
I really
circle drive.
appreciate it. And my
You guys
daughter-in-law.
got a Bobcat?
Well, we
Next
rented
time,
one.
invite me out. I love operating those things.
Oh, he does. He'd like to have one.
They're like little tanks.
No, this one was.
My neighbor got
It's a
one.
big.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like a.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have quite a bit of experience using those bucket trucks, forklifts.
Really.
Yeah. Even
Okay.
the big old 966 and the Y80s, the big old log fork trucks and all
Good
kinds of
night.
stuff. Yeah, I worked at a sawmill. It was fun.
Well, he enjoys it. His wife was very
I
good.
love
She was out
operating heavy
there
equipment.
doing work around my yard, making me feel slightly guilty, but that's okay.
Don't
She's
feel
a wonderful
guilty.
lady.
Don't feel guilty.
Uh,
You put in plenty of years of working in the house.
Cassie
She's-
never stops moving.
No.
You know what my
she
dad
doesn't.
always says? That's what I had you for, boy. That's what Dad says. That's what he used to tell me when I was a kid. He'd be like, make me a ginger ale and orange juice.
You know,
Sometimes he threatened to castrate me.
Oh, all in the name of fun.
Yeah.
it was amazing. Of course, I've always liked a large family, but my grandparents, they had 18 children.
Morning, Larry.
And,
Stephanie Shaw. Good morning.
And
18.
yeah, and
Wow.
16 of them made it to adulthood, and but their children were a resource for them because they had a huge farm in Oklahoma, and then
It's good to see you, Joe Katie.
And then when he went into the oil business, why the men went
And
right
Robin
along
Katie.
with him, and so their mindset for children are not the same as they are today because children at that point in time became very useful at about what 9 or 10. honey?
Helping
Yeah.
each
That
other out.
late?
Yeah. Well, it's probably earlier.
I'm talking
again.
about running equipment and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I used to hate mowing the lawn. We had just a little single-decked snapper that we used, and it took me 6.5 hours to mow the field. And it's 5 acres. Now I love it. I can't get enough of it.
You know,
I would mow every day of the week if I could.
I'm probably
gosh.
one of the rare people in my generation that can honestly say I have never mowed a yard in my life.
Well, you did once or twice, and it was a
Yeah,
disaster.
It was a disaster. And
It's like, Jim, just stop. Okay.
Yeah.
well, I'm going to tell a funny story.
This is
Can I
gonna
tell
be-
a funny story.
All right.
Oh.
Everybody, move in close. Move in for this.
This is an absolute truth. The young girl that lived next door to me, she and I were visiting about their yard, and I won't say their name, but their yard, their grass didn't look as green as our yard, and I said, I've got an idea, and I said, Jan, Dad's got a big 5-gallon tank of gas back in the shed in the back. Let's take that gas and let's spread it all over their grass and get it nice and bright and green. And man, when they come home, they'll be so shocked and excited.
Wait a
'cause
minute.
Their grass will look as green as ours.
Gas?
Gasoline.
Gas,
Yes.
gas in it.
Gasoline.
Okay, this is a real story.
This is a real one.
story. And so,
Long
I-
Like
one.
you were serious when you said this.
yeah,
Yes,
I was
yeah,
probably
yeah.
maybe 10 or something.
Oh, okay. I was
Yeah.
thinking as an adult.
No,
No,
I was about 10. This is a true story. And Jan goes, well, yeah, that's a great idea, Jim. So we go, I got the gas can out, and we just go all over the entire yard with gasoline, all over it, all the way up to their front porch and everything. And man, it's looking, and we turn back and look after we're done, and I'm going, look how bright and green that grass, it almost as green as Mom and Dad's grass. Look at that. And by the end of the day, it was brown. By the end of
You
the
think?
week, it looked like a desert, and it was absolutely
Boy, I bet your
barren
neighbors were
of,
so
of,
mad.
of anything. The trees were dying. There was no grass. There were no flowers. and Mr. I'm not going to say his name. Mr. F came over to the house, and he goes, "Is it true that your son came over here and poured gasoline all over my front yard?" And Dad looked back at me. He says, "James, did you do that?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I wanted it to look really bright, but it's not looking bright anymore." And that poor guy's. And I was 10, and when I went away to college, there still was no grass there. Dad paid to have the place hydromulch. Dad bought brand new sod for the yard. Dad brought in sod. Nothing would grow on that poor guy's yard.
You got it really deep in there. Now I've used gasoline to spray around the outer fence line, but it grows back. I don't know how.
Oh, no.
This did
You must have really doused it.
It looked like scorched earth, like a bomb had gone off on his front yard.
It was a gym bomb.
There was no flower, and I went away to college at 17, I think it was, and it was still barely a yard. That's unbelievable.
We have a saying
And
at
did
the
the
house.
trees die completely?
Yes, everything died.
Just died.
And Dad had guys come over one time,
Jim Whining, harbinger of death.
brought over loads of dirt, and then did it. I don't know what Dad paid to try to cover up.
Children are expensive.
But it
It
never worked. That yard was, and we've been by since we've been married, and it's got some grass on it and stuff, but
Just had a story.
it was that gasoline will do a number on your. So I never mowed a yard in my life because Dad would never turn a lawnmower over to me, and when I moved, of course I had people mow my yard, and I've never mowed a yard.
Well, Pam, have you ever mowed a yard?
Yes, I have.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
yeah.
I actually, it's my me time when I mow, because all you have to really worry about is cutting a straight line, and that's it. And then turning around and make sure that you don't run over the horses with it. But it's fun. I enjoy it.
You listen to music and stuff while you.
Oh yeah. I listen to audiobooks and stuff like that. It's a lot of fun. We didn't have that kind of technology whenever I was a kid, so it
No.
wasn't as fun.
Right.
We had headphones, but they weren't very loud.
Right.
And I had a
I
tape
didn't
player.
have
You'd always have
headphones or
to
anything.
flip it over
Yeah.
midway through mowing. Yeah, it's not fun.
We made the most of it.
So you guys are here for a purpose today. I'm excited. I've been telling you guys about this. Coming up next month, the 28th and 29th. That's a Monday and a Tuesday. Starting at 8 a.m., going on till 8 p.m. Both days is a telethon, and we'll call it what have we decided a name for it?
Doing the right thing, telephone.
Doing the right thing-a-thon.
Have I got a moment here?
Yep.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh! All right.
Ladies and
Well-
gentlemen, Jim Whining.
Oh boy. And this is not any advice on yard work, let me assure you. I got involved with X Ministry, I guess it's been 7 years. And I was amazed at all of the little components in the world that were connected with Acts Ministry. It was very fascinating. Dr. Paul had done a wonderful job of broadening a ministry into responding to a variety of human needs, and so that framework was set up, way back 27 years ago, and my job as president has been to activate these little ingredients and be part of making a difference in society. In case you haven't noticed, it's hard for our government to accomplish things today, and so that still doesn't mean that our people don't need some services and help and benefits and support. Our goal then is to kind of be there for people who are not part of the answering system going on for people. And that means if you have a special need, a disability, if you are a person who has been left behind, that's Acts Ministry. And Acts Ministry wants to connect into the world with both Christians and non-Christians and make a difference and help. And so what we've seen in Acts Ministry over these past 7 years is the growth of a group of people who are making a difference in lives of people that are not necessarily perfect. A good example and part of my wife and my life has been autism. And our oldest son was severely autistic. And we became, not because of option, but because of circumstance, we became very actively involved with autism. Acts Ministry became a part of it. And, of course, we have had many events involving autism. We have worked with churches to help them deal with autism because of its impact on breaking churches up. And we have been with several social causes throughout, from Pennsylvania to California to Texas, giving advice, information, and working with them over the phone and in person. That's one example of what Acts Ministry does. And it goes on, and how it goes on includes things like health. In case you haven't noticed it, there is a serious health epidemic, and part of it may be by self-imposed weight issues, etc. But many of us today are taking pharmaceuticals that really are more harmful to us than they are helpful. And there are many people, veterans, elderly, and people who are in lesser income who need help and for their conditions. And there are natural solutions which can not have those harmful side effects. And so we have available an affiliate called Natural Solution Store where you can purchase those. And for those who cannot financially support it, we have done fairs, raised money, and created a fund to help subsidize that. It's called the Helping Hands Fund, which is not limited to Christians. It's not limited to specific groups. It is designed for the human race, for us. And that's another example of what Acts Ministry is doing. And it has, there's so many other ones like for the veterans and also for the seniors, but I want to get to the fundraiser because I don't want to monologue here. Fundraiser is right now focused primarily on what you're looking at right now, Acts Television Network, the works of Matt Pearson and Jason Cobb, great men in the Lord. Leading in that ministry includes giving information for people and helping people get over bumps, which can include everything from suicide to literally hospice care on the screen at Facebook and YouTube. Such a worthy cause. Right now, we're operating at about 10% of what we really can do. With the right funding, and if this project is successful, our goal is that it would be a full-time service available, broadcast through our own website, under our own control, throughout the social network means, and that's all social network means. So it is so important at this turning point for us who are listening and who are helping to realize that Acts Ministry is not receiving money from Acts Media Group. We consider that our mission into the world to help people. We would love to have partners that help support what Acts Media Group does, whether it's an event for a health fair, for autism, for veterans, or whether it's actually listening to you on the radio or on Acts Television Network over Facebook or YouTube. This organization is reaching people for their needs, and that's what the entire fundraiser is about. Mm-hmm. I monologued enough, honey.
No, that's all right. You're either you be sitting there doing that commercial, or I be doing one also. So one way or the other, there's going to be some talking.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, just for quick bullets, some of the things that, in contributing to or being part of or being here, some of the things that Acts Ministry has done over the past 5 years is, of course, its work in autism, its work in health and human improvements, its work in educating people about marijuana, its work today on stewardship and helping people realize how money can be more effectively used, kidney transplants. We've started that particular fund, and also in helping a gentleman who has had so many challenges in his recovery receive a kidney transplant after 11 years of dialysis. Programs that we have for senior citizens. If you've ever watched the Happy Hour, Dr. Paul Collins and Nancy Collins, what a tremendous program that is. They've had programs for hearing aids. They've had programs for Medicare, for health insurance. They've had programs involving hygiene, etc. Just a wonderful program for education and improvement and helping people who otherwise wouldn't have that information, available at a convenient time or at a constant time. Because one thing we know when we broadcast, You can watch this again and again on YouTube or Facebook, and hopefully on our website on a continual basis.
We were trying to get some ideas of what we could get out to the public that would be kind of fun or entertaining or interesting. And some of the ideas, and this may shake you up a little bit, but let's say you do a craft and you'd like to share your craft and some of the things that you're making or how to do something. If you have a shop, that there's a shop that I'm kind of eyeballing right now, it's about parrots. And I've already bought some toys for my bird, Buddha.
Yeah.
Buddha, and I occasionally go down there at
Be one with yourself.
only. I think it's called Only for Parrots. I haven't talked to her yet, and maybe she could come and bring a parrot with her, and then talk about some of the toys that she has and what they're, what's the bright thing in parrots. And got my eyeball on a place that sells beads and all kinds of things, and I thought it'd be kind of fun for them to bring some of their wares to show people, what they have, and just anybody. If somebody's got some, maybe a new lotion that they think is just great, you want to share, and it doesn't have to be a long period of time. If you're, you can come up and be here for 10, 15 minutes for a small donation to ACTS Television, so that this program can continue on. And then you might get excited and want to have your own show. I can see the lady with the parrot having her own show and talking about,
Now,
parrot.
how would you fit a microphone on their feathers?
On their bill.
On their bill? Put it on their bill?
Yeah, put it on their bill.
All right, so real quick, I want to address a question
Yes.
that we had here. Larry says he wants to know how autism can break up a church. And you would be the authority on that because both of you have raised autistic children. Tell Larry what you meant by that.
Well, so often in a church, we get convenient in our worship. We do. We have that procedure. We have that spirituality going on during a worship that is normally not interrupted by loud screams, deviant activity. Deviant activity can be everything from throwing books to banging their head on a pew, and it can happen. It can happen so fast. My son was an example, and I don't like using myself as the best example because at that point, there was actually a point in time when I was acting as a district superintendent for a large church body, and I would visit churches, and of course I had to take my son because my wife and I, there's only so much you can do with a babysitter. In fact, usually babysitters run from you. But I would come in and usually try to put him in a room, a Sunday school room. That never worked. I made it maybe a third of the way through the service, observing the pastor, and then I'd have to leave. And then churches have these meetings. I know they have these meetings and decide, well, what can we do about these people that have autistic children? They're disrupting the worship. They're disrupting our classroom activities. They're making our worship impossible. And I can certainly agree with that. I can see where that can happen. And so then other groups would say in that same church, they would say, well, hey, if we can't respond to these people in need, who can we respond to? We have to be able to rise above that and be responsive to that. And so you would have two groups of people in that church, one saying, let them come in, we will worship and work through this problem, and then another group that would say, it is impossible for us to reach a stage of worship with these kinds of people coming into the church. And the church would bust. I can't tell you how many churches I've spoken to with that exact problem. My recommendations vary by church, and after some time of looking at their leadership and also their body, but I have always recommended that there be available in a church in the afternoon, preferably on a Sunday or maybe a Saturday, a special needs service so that people could still feel still feel welcomed in the church, but their worship would be in such a way that it would not necessarily interfere with those of others. You would think that would be a normal solution that would work for churches, and I tried that citywide in Kansas City through the council, and I can honestly say only 2 churches took me up on it. It is autism is not has not had a friendly eye from the Christian churches. It just has not. I can say that from personal experience, but that's what happens.
Larry says we have some kids like that. One of them actually tore off a downspout off the church. And he says that they have special classes for that.
Yeah.
If you can get a person that's qualified to watch those kind of children, and
I'm not certain my wife ever was in the congregation because she was the one that
I was usually in
Yeah.
Sunday school some way, shape, or
Yeah,
form.
yeah.
I teach the special needs adults Sunday school class at my church, and they're adults that are still very low functioning autism.
Yeah.
And they do it's hit and miss. Sometimes they get real stressed out and
Right.
just start freaking out. But and Jay, you have some children that are autistic in your class at Freeway. Autism is a lot more
It is difficult.
prominent now. That a lot of people wouldn't talk about it back in the past because they've just thought that they had misbehaving kids.
No, that's talking about church involvement. Churches and families and people who don't have a personal connection to autism. But now the families of autistic people and people with autism itself. Now, do you think technology has been helpful in that way, that it can bring it home to them, and that even though the church isn't doing what it should, that they've found a resource in technology that they can attend in some way without the disruption and find a way to get, because I know Sunday school for me is a very important part of my week, and I learn a lot through it, and so is the church itself, going to the sermon. So are those things being now, with the technology advances, brought to people with autism and
yes.
autistic families?
A lot of times,
Think they're getting relief there in some way?
well, a lot of times in churches they will telecast their sermons and Sunday schools in a room that parents with crying children or children who are having a display at that point in time.
It's a very nice way to put it.
They can still see what they can see and hear what they can hear. So that's why in technology. But in the home, the same things. You can a child can hear a story. Or some of them are very focused on horses or dogs or something and so you can find things in technology to interest them and kind of calm them and absorb them. So you have maybe a few minutes to yourself, but you can still watch your child, and your child is being calm and getting things that they need.
We had one of the churches I used to preach in. We had what I would call, and I had several churches like this that had pretty loud music, and I mean loud. I mean it would you'd feel the vibration on your face of the music, and you have to realize that your worship. And you're bringing a person to the point of being attentive to the lesson of the Lord has got to occur before that music happens. Because once that music hits and it becomes extremely loud, they are gone, and they are extremely irritable, and sound is so important in worship. If you're going to have including in your worship, you're going to have children with autism because that's the first thing about worship that churches have to address, and that is the subject of sound.
Well, a lot of the children now wear headphones.
Yes.
And rightfully so. Maybe more adults that are hearing sensitive.
Yeah.
So like
Wear
the
headphones.
earbuds that block out a lot
Yes.
of
Yeah. You can still hear it, but it's
overstimulating.
right.
Well,
We have an older gentleman at my church that wears a wireless monitor headset so that he doesn't really hear the music. He wants to just hear the pastor
Yes.
speak.
Yeah. Well, that's great technology, and again, technology helps there. And but you have to realize that the fundamental issue of autism is anti-socialism. It's anti-socialistic. They don't want, no social interaction is the best for them. That's the way they see it. So they want to know about it, but they don't want to be involved with it. And so that's the whole setting of worship is very social. You're all sitting together. You're all praying together. You're all singing together. That's not consistent with autism. Autism is individualism, very strong individualism. So somehow you have to take every event and individualize it. Literally. I remember when I used to preach, I would say, and I'd like to hear from so-and-so for their word in prayer, and point out to the autistic person that it's not a group, it's individuals that are together in a group.
Right.
Because that really sets I mean, I had a whole presentation about that for a church that didn't understand interaction. It was a pure lecture church. You know how a pastor that gets up there and preaches for 55 minutes, and you're going to hear that 55 minutes.
Speaking of lectures, now's a good time for us to talk about Acts Ministry University.
Oh, yes.
Well, I did have one more question.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay.
Well, and university is a good way, but you talked about qualification. So qualified people to help with autistic students, I would say,
Right.
students of
It could be. It could be. Yeah. It could be somebody who's a teacher of special education, or a teacher that a person that is very calming. Maybe has a lot of crafts, a lot of patience. Patience is very important, and I don't think it necessarily has to be like an educated,
Isabella.
Bachelor of Education teacher, but somebody who's been working with children for a long time, that knows how to kind of go with the flow. And that's what you need to do. You have to be able to go with the flow and just be calming, and that's right. You can't be just, if the kid, writes something on the wall, you don't go, berserk on that. You just say, okay, we shouldn't be doing that. Let's do it over here or something, just very calming.
And give them a reasonable expectation for time commitment, because
Yeah, they're very into time.
They do not. You get a teacher that's good with special needs. You do not, Jason, want to burn them up, and that's one of the my wife, when she was at the I'm not going to say the name of the congregation, but she never got out of the classroom. She was either her classroom or she had to go to somebody else's classroom to give them a little bit of a little piece of advice on how to do a project, etc. You burn people up.
Yeah.
And you need to be sensitive to the fact that they really came to the church selfishly for worship.
It's like our church does rotations.
Yes,
Yes,
they have
yes.
to do that.
So people can actually, like, if someone operates a camera, they can't operate the camera every single week because they want them to sit down and actually participate in worship. And a lot of people think, oh, well, just because you're behind the camera, I mean, you see all the worship, but that's not true.
No.
You got to concentrate on what you're doing. You can't really concentrate and let the word soak into your mind. Isabella, our frequent listener, says that she used to nanny for her friends 4 autistic boys.
Oh, gee.
She says, and something about me, I guess, made them soothed.
Yep.
Said my friend would call me when the boys were acting up. Maybe it was my voice or something, not sure.
That's
Well,
great.
Well,
She had that-
Isabella's adorable, first of all. She's her and her whole family. She's got an amazing family. I can't even remember where we met, but she's been watching us for years now. So four
Wow.
autistic boys.
Yeah,
Now
we-
you had 2.
Yes.
Well, yes.
And they're usually in different degrees.
different degrees, yeah.
degrees.
But here's the thing, and it's just like why people have always asked Pam and I, why for over 20 years did we have a program called Showtime Llamas and Alpacas? Alex walked out to we bought a llama, and all of a sudden, this boy who would do nothing. I mean, I can't tell you how struggling we were with him, and violent, and everything imaginable disruptive to society. And this llama, he went out one time, and he was attracted by its sound. And he heard the sound. Now, for a long time, he would only speak to me until he was about, 7 or so. He wouldn't speak to Pam or anybody else. And so he would come back, and then one day we noticed, did you notice that he brought the llama? Who was that llama? Apollo, the water?
Well, Apollo would be the first one, yeah.
Yeah, he brought him water, and then all of a sudden he was feeding him, And then he was constantly, because the fiber on llama is feels so good.
So it's not fur, it's fiber.
It's fiber.
Fiber.
And I'll just tell you that the senses of an autistic person are super enhanced. And that smell of a llama, that touch of a llama, that sound, it all of a sudden relaxed him. And Alex was talking to other kids about his llama. He was actually communicating. And that's why we did the pro, because we saw if it could work for Alex, it could work for other children, and it did.
It was really good. He was going to school and talking about his llama and
Yeah.
all the things. And they were kind of, wow, this kid's
Animals are
opening
very
up.
therapeutic.
Yes. Dogs, he's good with dogs.
Goes on. Horses are good for balance and coordination, but as far as direct contact, fiber feeling, sound, and it was and even to this day I can see children would come autistic, and they would come to the ranch, and you would see a llama run up to them and put its head on their shoulder, and you realize how important that
I
was.
watch videos of that kind of stuff, and it makes me so. Now, my brother has one of my brothers has cerebral palsy, and horse riding helped him
Yes.
because it takes concentration and constant muscle flexing to keep yourself on the in the
Right.
saddle.
Balancing.
Now, would it be
That's
best, like, so teams, would you think that it's best done in teams, like managing a program that would include autistic people in church or something like that?
Yes, team-wise, but then when the person gets antsy, and you can usually tell that, just that be able to have one person that can move them out, and if they just need to sit and play with like some marbles, or they need to look at blocks, or they just need to maybe do a puzzle, have that ability, for them to do that.
Here I am at my ripe old age, and
Ripe
my
old
wife
age.
my wife has informed me, and when you take a look at the assessments, that yes, I am autistic. I am high functioning autistic. And when I look back at how the teachers responded to me, I couldn't stand repeating. The teacher would get up and talk a specific project, like 4 times 4 is 16. Well, I can only take that once because I've got it in my head. And she finally, one of my teachers would say, okay, Jim, you can go outside, shut the door, run down the end of the hall, touch the fountain, and run back and come back. That's what I needed. We had some old-fashioned remedies.
Release the tension.
That helped people with autism. 'Cause I was high-functioning autistic. I was. I now can look
And
back at
escape
it.
the redundancy.
Yes, and now I appreciate that because my son's situation, of course, emasculated the entire thing. I mean, all of a sudden, whoa, and my wife, who's very objective and of course a teacher, 100% teacher, taught me all my life. Seems like she said, "Well, you're autistic."
She's got a lot of patience.
Yeah, and she said, "You're autistic," and I go, and I never looked at it that
What do
way.
they call that? Being on the spectrum?
Yes, I'm on. I definitely I know that now because I have to work to think about other people. That's why Acts Ministry is so wonderful, because Acts Ministry gets up thinking about other people before it thinks about Acts Ministry.
Yeah.
I mean, how else would you run this company? I'm still a businessman. How else do you run a ministry losing money like it does constantly, other than you're thinking about other people and not for the ministry itself?
Right.
And
Well, we appreciate all you guys do for us because we put in quite a few hours here, but you guys put in more than we do.
Oh, I don't know.
You guys are on it all the time. And we do appreciate you. We appreciate the opportunity to have this platform to talk to people about the Lord. Misty Prince does want us to pray for her. She said that they're calling in hospice for to work with her and keep her boyfriend comfortable. So, keep praying for Kevin,
Yes.
our friend Kevin. They're saying now it's like he's in stage 3 kidney failure. They're saying that eventually he will be on dialysis and will need a kidney eventually. But I said, hey, I know we have a kidney fund for that kind of deal. So if and when that happens, maybe we'll be able to help out. But who else do we pray for? Marcia. We need to pray for Marcia. Man, there's just so many. Just pray. Pray for everybody involved. Sorry, I was answering a message.
So how relentless is this kind of thing? Like in a family, are there are there regular moments throughout a day of peace and some sort of tranquility, or is this a constant battle? Because you were reacting with your son's autism was overstimulating probably yours.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I'm one of the rare people that it never. My son also was colic, and for those of you who know what I'm saying when I talk about colic, he would scream from 8:30 in the morning until 8:30 at night till maybe 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I would just rock him in my chair and watch CNN news, and I just rock him and hold him, and he would scream and scream, and finally he'd wear out. And I tried everything. My English friends gave me gripe water, etc. But
And this is a daily thing.
oh yeah. And then during the day, he would sound or a noise got too loud or something. He would scream and run through the house, throw his head against the wall, and then you were constantly, at the hospital explaining the situation. And I know they thought, well, hey, this parent doesn't know what's going on. And occasionally I can remember very regularly when I would pull up in my car to a stop sign and think to myself, I can take a little 2-minute nap here. And I would.
Oh, yeah.
I would. Because I was so desperate.
You got plenty of alarms sitting in other cars behind you.
Yeah.
The way I would see it.
Living through that, 70% of us end up divorced because of it. And I don't want that to happen. And yes, my ex-wife did leave. And there is a reason for that. There's certain personalities that don't belong in that setting.
It's hard.
And my second wife she was a person that knew how to step in, because I was a guy that, was horrible. Who in the world would want to date a guy with an autistic kid? And
obviously you found one.
And I mentioned
Lucky you.
I had 2 other kids running around there trying to get attention too, and it was pretty pathetic. I mean, I have to admit the house was not well organized, as certain people might say. It's survival mode.
Yeah.
And it just is.
And is it constantly survival mode?
It is.
Pretty much, if you can get a structure, Jay, if you can get a structure, they love the structure. You can look, if you say the clock at, 8 o'clock, we have to be on the bus. They're pretty good about I got to be on the bus. I got to be on the bus.
They're all about the scheduling.
All about the schedule.
Well, she brought discipline.
Routine.
She brought discipline in the house. She had.
It's probably consistency.
She brought what was called the refrigerator list.
Uh-oh.
And on that list, all the kids, they had to make certain they were doing those things, or 2 things weren't going to happen. 1, they weren't going to get to eat.
You too, Mary Gill. Thank you.
And 2, they weren't going to be able to have any free time. 0. And she had that list. And by gosh, it helped me, because I was just trying to survive. I didn't have really good organizational skills.
No, that's something I want to get to too. So then, when you
Well, we're running low on time, too,
when
so
you
let's keep that in mind.
were introduced into the scene, into the home, and then this structure emerged, and there seemed to be some relief, right?
Yes.
And then,
Yes.
what does that look like, and how can a person who's dealing with this kind of thing in their home? Because it seems like without someone coming in and helping, somebody who's prepared and committed and capable, then there is it's relentless.
Well,
But then all of a sudden, so where do we
It takes
find
time.
people?
Yeah, it just
And
takes
how?
time, and you have to be patient. And when you date somebody who has a child or children, I have a friend who's got 2 autistic boys, and she's married a wonderful man, and he's great. I mean, you have to be very open about it. But with Jim, it just took time, and because they're usually very focused towards him,
Yeah.
and they're
Well,
not very open to anybody else.
Mom and Dad, I had great parents, but they could not discipline very well, and but Dad was always, hey, you need some money for this, you need some money for this, can I buy this, whatever, what do you need, and I would try to get a babysitter, and before I would get home. I've said this before I would get home, they would see my car come up the driveway, and the young lady or the older lady would bust to their car and drive away. And I'd never pay them. because they
They
wouldn't.
haven't like once.
they had-
So one more question, real quick, and I understand. I'm sorry that we can't, but I'm really curious about this. What about the other children in the home?
Well, what happened was, in our case, my older daughter all of a sudden became a second mother, and took on that type of role, and she took it on primarily for my youngest daughter, and the sibling relationship didn't really develop until probably Alex is
Later.
23, 24 years of age.
Right.
You lose a lot of the fun of being a young kid when one of them is autistic. You just do.
do.
And in the case of my life with my parents, I had an older sister that was 9 years older, but I always used to say I was an only child with an older sister. And that's because my parents spent 100% of their time making certain I was happy, which meant that I was probably doing something wrong, pouring gasoline on somebody's driveway or something. Or
Well, hey,
yard.
at least they didn't have to mow for a while.
Oh yeah, that's the bright side. That's
You
the
know,
really bright side.
I know that gentleman, that father over there, wanted to kill me.
And they, and hey, if he bought what he could have done was he could have bought a bunch of little go karts with 4-wheel tires on them, some big tires, and just made like a little mud track in their front yard.
How great! How
That would
great!
have been awesome. You gotta lemon out of lemonades,
Yes,
Everybody
yes,
needs
that
mud.
is.
Everybody needs a little dirt and mud.
or
in their
lemonade
life.
out of
yeah.
lemons.
Oh yeah.
But it's time for us to. Mary
Sorry,
Gill
I-
says, "Dearest family,
I wish we had more time.
we serve the Lord in Pakistan and keep remembering us in your prayers and our missions. Of course we will. Sister Mary Gill, we really love hearing from you and seeing what you're doing out there in Pakistan. And we will get you on here somehow, some way,
yes.
video-wise or on the phone. We'll get it figured out. But it's time for us to, alas, it's time for us to get out of here.
Oh.
I know. Time flies, man. We need to have you guys on. You guys should drive down here every morning from Kansas City
Oh yeah. Right.
or from Lone Jack. Well, tune in next for the Crosswalk of Hope with Dennis and Becky Code.
Some of my favorites.
So, Jim and Pam, we thank you guys for being on the show with us
Thank you for
today.
asking us.
We always love having you guys
Thank
here.
you.
God bless you now.
And
Thank you.
thank you guys for tuning in today. And Jay, thank you for all your really good questions. Jay's a good question asker.
Oh, he
So,
is.
Anyways, we'll be back on tomorrow, same time, same channel. So until then, my friends, God bless you and keep you. We love you. My name is Matt.
My name is Jay.
And
I'm
and,
Jim.
I'm Pam.
And this has been the Morning Drive.
Oh, and there's